The atmosphere aboard the Hegemony Central Command was electric with tension. Red alert sirens pulsed through the air like a heartbeat of war, and every monitor, every terminal, every officer buzzed with activity. On the command deck, Admiral Kang stood at the center like the eye of a storm, his expression cold and composed as the massive holographic battle display rotated slowly before him. It showed the entirety of the Hegemony's battle fleet, over 7,000 warships arrayed in a flawless defensive formation around their homeworld. This was no drill. This was history in the making. "Status report," Kang ordered, his voice calm but absolute. Commander Lee didn't look up from her console as she replied, "Human vessel expected to emerge from hyperspace in 3 minutes. Admiral, all defensive systems are fully armed and charged." Kang nodded once, tightly. Excellent. The intelligence reports had been unequivocal. Months of escalating tension had led to this moment. Diplomatic talks had broken down, sanctions had failed, and covert operations had been exposed. The humans, according to intercepted communications, had finally decided to respond with open war. The Hegemony's spy network, renowned for its precision and reach, had confirmed that a sizable fleet was en route from Earth. There was no ambiguity in the message. The humans were coming, and they were bringing everything they had. Kang adjusted the clasp on his uniform, feeling the weight of destiny pressing down on his shoulders. This would be his legacy the day he crushed humanity's rebellion and reaffirmed Hegemony supremacy for another 1,000 years. His name would be etched in galactic history alongside the greatest military leaders the stars had ever known. 2 minutes to emergence, Lee announced, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. Silence fell across the bridge. Officers, aides, and analysts all paused as one, eyes trained on the central display. It was the kind of silence that came before a storm, when even the breath of the universe seemed to hold itself in check. 7,000 ships stood ready. Weapons systems were online, shields humming at full strength, and squadrons of fighters were in tight formation around key targets. 1 minute. Kang leaned forward slightly in his command chair, staring at the faint ripple in the holographic space field, the telltale shimmer that marked an impending hyperspace emergence. In his mind, he pictured what was coming. Rows upon rows of angular human warships, bristling with experimental weaponry backed by nuclear-powered carriers and Earth's infamous stealth cruisers. He expected hundreds, maybe thousands. Anything less would be suicide. "Emergence detected," Commander Lee said, her fingers moving quickly across her console. A quiet gasp rippled through the room. On the central display, a single ripple appeared in the virtual fabric of space. One, just one. Then the ripple solidified. One ship emerged. Kang's brow furrowed. Where is the rest of their fleet? Lee frantically recalibrated her sensors. No other vessels detected, Admiral. Just the one. What? Kang stood up, pacing toward the display. The ship in question was smaller than a Hegemony heavy cruiser. Sleek, dark, with contours that bent and absorbed surrounding light in ways that defied conventional optical tracking. It bore the unmistakable insignia of the human space service, H's Retribution. The name was stenciled in bold white across its hull. Kang's first instinct was disbelief. This had to be a trick, a feint, some sort of stealth maneuver. "We're receiving a transmission," Lee added, still sounding baffled. "Audio and visual feed." "Put it through," Kang snapped. The main screen flickered to life. A human appeared, female, dark hair pulled back in a tight regulation style, wearing a black uniform lined with silver. Her demeanor was composed, even confident. She stood with the posture of someone who had nothing to fear. "This is Captain Hannah Park of the HS Retribution," she said. "I request immediate diplomatic parley with the Hegemony Council." A murmur spread through the command center. Kang raised a hand, silencing the room. His jaw clenched. It was absurd. One ship, one captain requesting diplomacy? "Is this some kind of ruse?" he asked, turning to his intelligence officer, Sun. "No signs of cloaked vessels or hidden energy signatures," Sun replied, scanning his instruments. "Nothing indicates a fleet is nearby." Kang turned his gaze back to the human woman. Her face remained impassive, almost serene. It made no sense. No one, not even humans, would confront a 7,000-ship armada with a lone vessel. "Put me through," Kang said after a moment. The communications officer nodded, and the line went live. "Captain Park," Kang said, keeping his tone neutral. "This is Admiral Kang of the Hegemony Defense Force. Your request for parley is unexpected." "I hope it is not unwelcome," Park replied, her expression softening with a faint, polite smile. "What we need to discuss is of the utmost importance to both our peoples." Kang didn't waste time. "Where is the human fleet? Our intelligence indicated a full deployment." Park didn't flinch. "I am the human fleet." The silence that followed was deafening. For a brief moment, laughter erupted from some of Kang's officers before he cut them off with a sharp glare. "You expect me to believe Earth has sent one ship to challenge our might?" he asked. "I don't expect you to believe anything without evidence," Park replied. "That's why I request a formal audience with your council. Some truths must be seen to be understood." Tung muted the transmission and turned to his advisor. "It's clearly a trap," Lee argued. "They may have developed a cloaking technology we can't detect." "Our sensors are the most advanced in the quadrant," Sun countered. "If there's a fleet here, it's beyond anything we've ever seen." "Maybe they're stalling," another officer chimed in. "Buying time while their real force assembles elsewhere." Kang considered the possibilities. None sat right with him. There was something else happening here, something deeper than tactics or deception. He unmuted the feed. "Captain Park, you arrive in Hegemony space without invitation. Our government has declared a state of war." "If war was our intention," Park said evenly, "we wouldn't be speaking right now." Kang studied her face. No fear, no arrogance, just calm certainty. It was unnerving. "You have 1 hour," Kang said at last. "Convince me this is worth the Council's attention." "Thank you, Admiral," Park replied. "I look forward to our conversation." As the feed cut, Kang gave his next order. "Full scan of that vessel. I want to know everything about it. Power output, hull composition, propulsion systems, and maintain full battle readiness." He stared at the lone ship, drifting silently amid the void, surrounded by thousands of Hegemony warships. "What game are you playing, Captain Park?" he muttered. For a long moment, no one on the Hegemony command deck moved. The space around their homeworld had been fortified with 7,000 ships, dreadnoughts, battle cruisers, interceptor swarms, orbital weapons platforms, all standing in synchronized silence, like a coiled fist waiting to strike. They had expected a massive confrontation. Instead, only one ripple broke through the void of hyperspace. And from it came a single vessel. It glided into view with eerie calm, almost like a predator entering the den of a larger beast, unafraid. The ship was unlike anything in the Hegemony fleet. Its design was all sharp angles and smooth curves, and the way it bent light gave it a ghost-like presence, difficult to track even with their most advanced sensors. Where a typical warship was covered in visible weapon arrays and sensor masts, this one seemed to hide everything behind its obsidian hull. It bore no signs of distress, no white flags of surrender, just a quiet confidence, drifting alone in hostile space. Admiral Kang's jaw tightened as he studied the image. The vessel displayed clear human markings. HS Retribution. Not a fleet, not an armada, just one ship. His fingers curled into a fist. "Commander Lee," he said, voice low but steady, "confirm again." "No other ships?" Lee's fingers flew over her controls. "Confirmed, Admiral. No additional hyperspace signature. No residual wake trails. No hidden gravitational anomalies. It's alone." "That's not possible," Kang murmured. "Our intelligence was clear. They were sending an invasion fleet." He turned toward Officer Sun. Could they be cloaked, hiding behind a stealth veil? Sun shook his head. "Unlikely. Our passive sensors show no irregularities, no distortion fields, and no quantum scrambling signatures. If they're here, they're using technology we've never seen." The possibility was unsettling. Kang had reviewed every report, every intercepted message, every psychological profile of Earth's military leaders. They were many things: bold, unorthodox, resourceful, but not foolish. To send a single ship into the center of the hegemony's military power was suicidal, unless they knew something he didn't. Just then, the communications officer looked up. Incoming transmission from the human ship, sir, audio and visual. Kang didn't hesitate. On screen, the bridge lights dimmed slightly as the central holoprojector activated. A crisp, high-definition feed resolved into the image of a human woman standing confidently aboard her vessel's bridge. Her uniform was dark and formal, highlighted with subtle silver insignia. She had the calm, unreadable expression of someone in complete control. "This is Captain Hannah Park of the HI's Retribution," she said, voice firm but respectful. "I formally request diplomatic parley with the Hegemony High Council." The words landed like a whisper in a thunderstorm. Whispers broke out across the bridge. Some laughed nervously. Others exchanged glances filled with confusion or suspicion. Kang raised a hand for silence, his eyes never leaving the image of the captain. She looked so calm, not smug, not defiant, just certain. Kang leaned forward slightly. "Open a channel. I'll speak to her directly." The audio link reactivated with a soft chime. "Captain Park," Kang began, keeping his voice level. "This is Admiral Kang of the Hegemony Defense Force. Your presence here is unexpected. Your request for parley even more so." "I understand," Park replied smoothly. "But what I have to say cannot wait. I carry the full diplomatic authority of the United Earth Government. I believe our conversation could prevent a catastrophic conflict." Kang narrowed his eye. "You claim to represent your entire species, and yet you arrive alone. Where is the rest of your fleet?" Park held his gaze without flinching. "I am the fleet." Kang almost laughed. His officers weren't so restrained. Some openly chuckled. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Kang glared at them until the laughter died. "You expect me to believe Earth has sent a single ship to confront the full power of the hegemony?" "I expect you to believe your censors," Park replied evenly. "There's no deception here, Admiral. No ambush, just one ship and one chance to talk." Her tone carried no threat, but it carried something else, something Kang couldn't quite place. It wasn't desperation. It wasn't arrogance, it was certainty. That alone made him pause. He muted the transmission again and turned to his senior staff. "She's bluffing," Commander Lee said quickly. "They have to be hiding something. No species would be this reckless unless they had something powerful up their sleeve." "She's stalling," said another officer. "They're buying time for the real fleet to emerge somewhere else." "Possibly," Officer Sun added. "But I've reviewed her body language and tone. She doesn't seem nervous. If this is a deception, she's either the best liar we've ever seen or truly believes she has the upper hand." Kang considered it. No theory satisfied him. None explained why Earth would risk everything on a single ship. He reopened the channel. "You arrive in hegemony space without authorization," Kang said. "Our government has already declared a state of war against your people." "If that were our intent as well," Park replied, "we wouldn't be having this conversation." Her response was disarming in its logic. Kang's eyes narrowed. "You truly believe one ship can negotiate terms with an empire that spans half the galaxy?" "With all respect, Admiral," she said, her voice firm but courteous, "you don't yet understand what one ship can do." A chill passed through Kang's chest, not because of what she said, but because of how she said it. There was no bravado in her tone. No veiled threat. Only unwavering confidence. It made his instincts twitch. She wasn't bluffing. Or if she was playing the bluff better than anyone he had ever encountered. "You have 1 hour," Kang said at last. "You'll present your case to me personally. After that, I will decide whether this warrants the Council's time." Park nodded once. "Understood. I'll see you soon." The screen went dark. Kang stood silently, his face unreadable, Run a full scan on that ship, he finally ordered. Every frequency, every emission. I want to know its power output, armament, structural composition, everything. Aye, sir. And keep the fleet at full readiness. This smells like a trap, but I won't be the fool who underestimates them. As his officers scrambled into motion, Kang looked once more at the ship suspended on the display. The retribution floated against the vast backdrop of stars like a dagger in the dark, small, unassuming, and yet somehow terrifying. They expected an army, he murmured to himself. An Earth center? Admiral Kang sat alone in the private conference room aboard his flagship, the lights dimmed to a soft, amber hue. A single projection floated above the table, the rotating image of the HS Retribution. It still made no sense. No reinforcements had arrived, no follow-up ships, no hidden armada revealed itself in the system. It was just her, one ship, one captain. And now she was here, requesting a face-to-face conversation. The door hissed open. 2 security officers entered, escorting a woman dressed in a sleek, dark uniform bearing silver trim. She was smaller than Kang expected, shorter than the average hegemony officer, but she carried herself like she commanded gravity. Calm, composed, eyes alert but not tense. Captain Park, Kang greeted, standing with formality. Welcome aboard. Admiral, she nodded, returning the gesture with measured respect. Thank you for agreeing to meet. He gestured for her to sit. As she did, he studied her, searching for signs of strain, of anxiety, anything that would betray the pressure she must surely feel, but there was none. If she was bluffing, she had nerves of steel. Our scans show your vessel is armed, but not heavily, Kang began as he took his seat. No planet crackers, no mass driver arrays. And yet, you arrive here unescorted, outgunned, surrounded by enough firepower to glass your homeworld. You seem remarkably at ease. Park placed a small device on the table. It whirred softly, projecting a 3-dimensional hologram of a star system. Kang recognized it instantly. It was their central system, his system. 3 days ago, Park said calmly, we deployed quantum observation devices across your core worlds. They are undetectable by conventional means. Kang's eyes narrowed. Spying is not a promising start to diplomacy. Insurance, she corrected gently, and not simply observation. These devices were designed to manipulate the quantum structure of matter within a defined radius. What I'm offering is not a threat, Admiral. It's a demonstration. She looked over to the side and made a subtle gesture. One of her security officers stepped forward, retrieved a plain metal cup from a side table and handed it to her. Park placed it beside the projection and pressed a sequence on the device. The cup shimmered, then collapsed into a pile of dust. Kang's breath caught. What did you do? He asked, voice quiet but tense. We altered the quantum binding properties of the metal, Park explained. This is the power of Project Sunburst. Those same devices already deployed in your system can do this on a planetary scale. Silence. It wasn't a boast. She wasn't posturing or threatening. She was simply stating a fact. One that landed with the weight of an asteroid. This is why I am the fleet, Admiral, she continued. The Retribution does not need backup. It carries a message, one that, if ignored, could destroy everything you've built. Kang stared at the fine gray dust that used to be a cup. He didn't move for several seconds. Then he stood and gestured toward the door. The Council will see you now, Captain Park. Later that day, inside the Hegemony's Grand Council chamber, 3 of the highest-ranking officials appeared via holographic projection, towering, elegant beings with long necks and glowing eyes, speaking through universal translators. They regarded Park with a mix of curiosity and irritation. This is highly irregular, said High Counselor Jin. Explain the meaning of this incursion. I represent the United Governments of Earth, Park said, offering a formal bow. I come not as an invader but as an emissary. My mission is to prevent unnecessary bloodshed. You bring 1 ship? Scoffed Supreme Commander Nam. You insult us with this charade. Park allowed herself a faint smile. Perhaps it is your assumptions that have created the insult. What could you possibly hope to accomplish here? Nam demanded. You face annihilation. I've come to show you why that course would lead to mutual destruction, Park said, and why it is in both our interests to consider another path. Nam turned away, clearly dismissive, but Jin was not so quick to brush her off. You claim a single vessel can deter the might of our empire? She nodded, yes, because destruction is not a matter of quantity anymore, Counselor. It's a matter of understanding physics at a level your civilization has not yet reached. There was silence. She continued, you rule by fear. Power, to you, is measured in fleets and systems conquered, but humanity measures it differently. We measure it in the ability to survive, to adapt, to think asymmetrically. Commander Nam's translator clicked with disbelief. Asymmetry will not save you. It will only delay your destruction. Park looked at him, unfazed. Then I invite you to test that theory. But before you do, I recommend you examine the moon and the dew system. Or rather, what remains of it. That shut them up. Jin turned to a communications aide. Dispatch a scout to the dew system. Now. 3 hours later, the footage arrived. The Retribution had positioned itself near a small, uninhabited moon. The ship held position for several minutes. Then, without warning, a flash of unstable energy distorted the video feed. When it cleared, the moon was gone. In its place, a spiraling vortex of collapsed matter that swallowed light and mass alike before winking out, leaving behind nothing. Not even dust. Not even dust. The silence in the council chamber was absolute. Captain Park's image reappeared. That was one sunburst device, she said quietly. There are 12, all calibrated to strike critical hegemony targets. Shall we discuss terms now? Jin found his voice first. This could be a deception. Science Officer Yoon, back on the flagship, interrupted. Sir, the readings are consistent with a localized singularity. Mass equivalent to 8.3 trillion tons was consumed in under 7 seconds. Commander Nam growled. And if she's bluffing? Jin looked at Kang. Do you believe her? Kang didn't answer right away. He thought about the moon, the dust, the confident eyes across the table. I believe, he said slowly, that if we call her bluff, we may not live long enough to know if it was one. Captain Park stood at the edge of the Hegemony Council's massive circular chamber, surrounded by 12 towering holographic figures, each a representative of one of the most powerful worlds in the known galaxy. It should have felt like standing in front of a firing squad, but she didn't flinch. The chamber shimmered with quiet tension, like the pause between lightning and thunder. High Counselor Jin leaned forward in his throne-like seat. Captain Park, he said, his tone formal but tinged with disbelief. You claim to speak for all of humanity, and you arrive alone. You threaten us with a single demonstration. Explain yourself. Park stood tall, clasping her hands behind her back. Sometimes, Counselor, one is all that's needed. That answer drew murmurs from the council members, but she didn't let it shake her. Supreme Commander Nam was the first to raise his voice again. You destroyed a moon, he snapped. Do you believe such violence commands respect? Park's voice remained steady. I believe it commands attention. We didn't come to provoke. We came to prevent escalation. But if provoked, we are prepared. Jin's fingers tapped thoughtfully against the edge of his console. You said there are 12 such devices. Yes, Park confirmed. 12 sunburst payload. Each one capable of reducing a celestial body to nothing in under 10 seconds. We've positioned them near key hegemony targets. We didn't want to, but you've left us no alternative. Nam stood up in his projection, towering even in light. You would destroy yourself to stop us. If we have no choice, Park replied, then yes, we would take you with us. There was silence. Because it wasn't a threat. It was a promise wrapped in logic. We calculate the risk, she continued, and we ensure it remains mutual. The sunburst devices don't just annihilate targets, they destabilize local spacetime. If deployed on a populated world, the resulting collapse could spiral across systems. You may win the war, but what would be left? Trade Minister Zhu shook his head. We have never encountered such a weapon. That's because you've never had to, Park said. You've ruled uncontested for millennia. No rival, no risk, until now. Jin cut in again. Suppose we believed you. Suppose these devices exist. Why not deploy them already? Why come here? Park took a breath. Because Earth does not want war, she said. We don't want your territory. We don't want your resources. We don't want conquest or glory. We want to exist without fear. And right now, your fleets are positioned to erase us. You act like victims, Nam growled. Yet you threaten the lives of trillions. We act like survivors, Park shot back. Your empire sees peace as submission. We see it as a negotiation. We're giving you the chance to choose peace while we still can. As her words echoed across the chamber, the silence stretched. Then, breaking the moment, Jin motioned to a communications officer. We want proof, he said, of your other ships, of these deployments. You say you've placed devices across our territory, show us? Park nodded slowly. A reasonable request. She tapped her wrist console. The HS Defiance is currently positioned near your colony world Saren. In exactly 5 minutes, it will transmit a verification signal to your local outpost. Encrypted, authenticated, undeniable. On the other end, Jin gave a nod. A separate officer immediately relayed instructions to the Saren outpost. While they waited, Park continued. Our colonies are farmers, miners, explorers. We expand to survive. You viewed that as a threat. You sent warships. You built surveillance outposts. You planned a campaign of subjugation. And now, she said, her tone softening, you face the only response we had left. Moments later, a technician announced, signal received from Saren outpost. It matches the exact parameters specified. There it was. The illusion turned real. The possibility transformed into terrifying plausibility. Whether or not a ship was actually there didn't matter anymore. They had seen enough. The bluff had become reality in their minds. High Counselor Jin's voice dropped a notch. Let us discuss terms. Park offered a nod. First, full recognition of all current human colonies as sovereign and independent. No incursions, no interference. Jin looked around the chamber, gauging support. Slowly, reluctant nods followed. Second, she continued a non-aggression pact. 50 standard years, with automatic renewal unless formally withdrawn by either party. That is too long, objected Defense Minister Yu. Circumstances change, empires rise and fall. Then 35, Park offered, with a review clause every 10 years. More murmurs. Then, eventual agreement. Third, Park added, open trade corridors. Equal fees for hegemony and human vessels. No more economic blockade. Trade Minister Song leaned forward. That would require a complete restructuring of our shipping protocol. You've charged us 10 times your internal rate, Park replied. That's not trade, that's economic warfare. Song hesitated. 2.5 times the internal rate, he said finally. Prepaid annual. Agreed. Park paused. One final condition, she said. All hegemony surveillance outposts within 2 light years of human space must be dismantled. That one hit hard. Security Minister Du protested immediately. Those posts monitor pirate activity. They are not military installations. They monitor more than pirates, Park said flatly. They've tracked our ships, recorded our maneuvers, and mapped our defensive systems. You want peace? Start by dismantling the tools you use to plan our annihilation. Jin turned to Admiral Kang. Her accusations true? Kang met Park's gaze before responding. Yes, he said. They are. It was a powerful moment. One officer confirming what everyone else hoped to deny. Jin inhaled deeply. Then we will relocate those stations beyond the boundary and provide coordinates. Inspections will be allowed to verify compliance. Park nodded. Then we have a framework. Not everyone was pleased. War Minister Choi stood, face red with rage. This is surrender, he spat. They are bluffing. There are no other ships. No real threat, just shadows and tricks. Jin's voice cut across the chamber like a blade. You will sit down, Minister, or be removed. Choi hesitated, but no one backed him. He sat. Jin turned back to Park. The treaty will require full ratification by both our governments. They'll agree, Park said, because war is no longer the greatest threat in the room. At that, the chamber finally fell quiet. Back aboard the Retribution, the tension in the air was a different kind of heavy. The adrenaline from the council meeting had faded, leaving behind a quiet, gnawing weight. Captain Hannah Park sat alone in her ready room, the dim glow of the holographic stars outside her window flickering across her face. The peace talks had gone better than anyone could have predicted, but the cost of the illusion was beginning to show. A soft chime broke the silence. Come in, she said. Lieutenant Han stepped through the sliding door, holding a data pad. The hegemony has agreed to begin formal negotiations tomorrow morning, he said. They're still scanning us every 10 seconds, trying to figure out how we pulled that off. Let them scan, Park replied without looking up. They won't find anything they can understand. Han hesitated for a moment. Captain, the crew's talking. They know we're alone. They know what we're up against. Some are wondering if this is a suicide mission. Park turned slowly to face him. They're right to wonder. Han didn't respond. She sighed. Tell them the truth, Han. We didn't come to win a war. We came to stop one before it could start. She paused, then added more quietly, but if we fail, we don't get a second chance. Han gave a tight nod and left the room. As the door closed, Park reached under her desk and opened a small compartment. Inside was a black cube, smooth, cold, unmarked. The activation key for the sunburst device. She held it in her hands, weighing not just the object but the responsibility it carried. 12 devices. That's what she had told the hegemony. But only 3 were real. 3 functional prototypes. The rest, hollow shells. Placeholders meant to complete a lie too big to examine too closely. She was bluffing on a galactic scale, and so far, it was working. Later that evening, the senior officers gathered in the briefing room. The walls pulsed softly with blue light, casting shadows across tired faces. Around the table sat the best Earth had to offer: scientists, engineers, tacticians, all hand-picked. Oh, volunteer. Park stood at the head of the table. Tomorrow's meeting will determine whether humanity has a future, she began. But there's something you all need to know, something only a few of you have been briefed on. They listened, eyes steady, expressions guarded. Project Sunburst isn't just a defensive weapon, Park continued. It's the result of decades of theoretical quantum research technology designed to collapse matter at the subatomic level. We know that part, said Science Officer Yan. But what we didn't tell the Council, Park said, is this: if we use the remaining devices again, there's a high chance we'll cause permanent distortions in local spacetime, not just destroying the target, but damaging the very fabric of the galaxy. There was a long silence. So, if we use it again, Yan said slowly, we might stop the invasion but tear open something we can't close. Exactly. And we only have 3, said Security Chief Wu, leaning forward. Not 12. Correct? Correct. Weapons Officer Minute exhaled. Then tomorrow we bluff. Yes, Park said firmly, we bluff. We convince them that we have more power than they can risk testing. We make them believe that war equals extinction. And if they call our bluff, Minute asked. Park didn't flinch. Then we fire every real device we have and pray they're scared enough by the first to back off. The next morning, Park stood once again in front of the Hegemony High Council, calm on the outside, despite the storm churning beneath the surface. High Counselor Jen began. You've made bold claims, Captain Park. Do you have anything further to demonstrate before we move to finalize this treaty? Park tapped her wrist. A new hologram appeared, 12 red dots blinking across a map of the hegemony's core systems. These are the targets, she said. Each device is already in place, each one capable of creating the same effect you saw in the DO system. Supreme Commander Num stood again. You ask us to believe that Earth has deployed weapons capable of destroying entire planets, and yet you arrived here alone? Park smiled slightly. Because one ship was all it took. Num scoffed. What if we destroy you right now, you and your ship? You can try, Park said. But the moment you do, the devices will activate. And even if you manage to stop the retribution, 3 other ships stand ready to act. All of their captains carry the same orders I do. Lieutenant Han, watching from off-screen, swallowed hard. That part was completely fabricated. There were no other ships, no backup. Just the retribution, drifting alone amid the largest fleet ever assembled. But it didn't matter. Because the fear was real. And fear, Park knew, was often more powerful than any weapon. Back aboard the retribution, Han approached her after the meeting. They believed it, he said quietly. Park nodded. For now. But what happens when they figure out we don't have 12 devices? Park looked at him, her expression unreadable. By then, the treaty will be signed. The political cost of backing out will be higher than the risk of calling the bluff. Han hesitated. And if they do call it anyway? She turned to the viewport, watching the stars. Then we fight. We fire the real ones. And Earth remembers us as the crew that gave them time to prepare. Han didn't speak. There wasn't anything left to say. Later that night, Park recorded her mission log. Her voice was steady, but her fingers trembled slightly. We have bought time, she said. Not with force, but with the illusion of force. Our weapons are real, but our strength is perception. The hegemony believes we are capable of destroying them. And so for now, they choose peace. She looked down at the black cube on her desk. But peace built on fear is fragile. We've delayed war. We haven't ended it. She reached to shut off the recording but paused. History will remember this moment, she said softly. One ship, one bluff, one chance. And sometimes, that's enough. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Hegemony Capital World was a vast cathedral of light and shadow, its dome ceiling glittering with projected constellations. At the center stood a long obsidian table, flanked on one side by the holographic forms of the hegemony's 12 counselors, and on the other, by the solitary, real figure of Captain Hannah Park. She stood motionless, spine straight, uniform pristine. Before her sat the finalized treaty, 12 articles of mutual recognition, non-aggression, trade access, and the dismantling of surveillance outposts. Everything Earth had demanded. High Counselor Jin cleared his throat, voice amplified by the hall's subtle acoustics. Captain Park, as High Counselor of the Hegemony, I hereby sign this treaty of mutual recognition on behalf of our sovereign government. With a flick of his fingers, the digital signature glowed at the top of the document. Park stepped forward and did the same. This is Captain Hannah Park of the HS Retribution, she said firmly. On behalf of the United Earth Government, I sign this agreement and accept its terms. A soft chime signaled completion. It was done. Applause followed, hesitant at first, then building to a respectful, if not enthusiastic, ovation. The galactic order had shifted, not through conquest, not through annihilation, but through a single, impossible negotiation. As the crowd began to disperse, High Counselor Jin approached Park quietly. You risked much coming here alone, he said. Park turned to him. Sometimes, Counselor, one must risk everything, to avoid losing everything. Jin studied her carefully. Our intelligence division suggests the Retribution is a prototype. That Project Sunburst is not as widespread as you claim. Park didn't blink. History will record only what happened, Counselor. That you faced a weapon beyond your understanding and chose peace. Jin gave a slow, unreadable nod. Indeed, and sometimes that's enough. Back aboard the Retribution, the mood was cautiously celebratory. The crew moved quietly through the corridors, not with jubilation, but with the measured grace of people who knew the war wasn't won, only postponed. In the small mess hall, Lieutenant Han raised his cup. "To the captain," he said, "who bluffed the most powerful empire in the galaxy into backing down." The others chuckled lightly, clinking cups and sharing a meal that, for once, didn't feel like their last. Park sat with them for a while, accepting the praise with humility. She smiled at their jokes, nodded at their reflections, but she didn't join in the laughter. Her mind was already elsewhere on the decisions still ahead. Later, in her quarters, she recorded another mission log. "The Treaty of Mutual Recognition has been signed," she said. "Earth's sovereignty is secured. Our colonies are safe for now. The Retribution will return home with all systems intact and all personnel accounted for. We did what we came to do." She hesitated, "But I must also record for classified review the following. The Hegemony Council suspects our deception. Though no action was taken, I believe they are testing our consistency, measuring our response. They may not know we only have 3 functioning sunburst devices, but they know something doesn't add up." Her voice softened. "Still, they chose peace. Why? Not because they trust us, but because they fear us." She paused again, and perhaps that's what peace always starts with: fear. Far from the celebration, deep within the Hegemony's core systems, a lone scout vessel hovered at the edge of the Dew system where the now-vanished moon had once been. Captain B of the scout vessel Harmony sent his encrypted findings directly to Admiral Kang. The message was short, direct, and deeply unsettling. "The singularity didn't just consume the moon," B reported. "It left behind a permanent wound in space-time, small but measurable, and still active. Quantum readings are erratic. Exotic particles are reacting with local matter. It's not healing." Kang stared at the data for a long time. Then he encrypted the message again, sent it to his private terminal, and deleted all traces from the ship's central log. He stood in silence, the weight of the implications bearing down like gravity. If what Captain Park said was true, if the sunburst technology could do this on a planetary scale, then the cost of war had become unthinkable. Still, something gnawed at him. The demonstration had been too perfect. The timing of the sarin signal, too convenient. And Park herself calm, collected, but just a little too relieved when the treaty was signed. She had been bluffing. He didn't know how much, but enough. And yet, they still had no choice but to act as if every word had been true. At the same time, on the return journey to Earth, Park met with her senior officers in the dimly lit war room. Science Officer Yan spoke first. "The quantum disruption at the test site is still expanding. Slowly, but it's not dissipating. We recommend no further tests." "Understood," Park said. "And the other 2 devices?" "Stable. But we shouldn't assume repeat deployments will be safe." Security Chief Wu added. "The Hegemony didn't challenge the claim of 12 devices again. But they're watching. If we make one mistake, they'll pounce." "We won't make one," Park said. Lieutenant Han frowned. "Captain, how long do you think we can keep up the illusion?" Park looked him in the eye. "Long enough." 2 weeks later, the Retribution broke through Earth's upper orbit, returning to a hero's welcome. As the ship docked with Earth Command's high atmosphere station, General Kim's face appeared on the comm screen. "Captain Park," he said, expression serious but respectful. "The President is waiting for your full debriefing, but first, did they believe you?" Park smiled, a little tired but sincere. "They believed enough." "And the sunburst device?" "It worked," she said. "Maybe too well. The singularity is still active." Kim's face darkened. "Understood. We'll recommend halting all testing." Before the feed cut, Park added, "Sir, there's something else." The hegemony isn't evil. They're afraid. They've ruled alone for so long that our very existence threatens their identity. That's fear. It's what gave us leverage. Kim nodded slowly. You sound sympathetic. Not sympathetic, Park replied. Realistic. If we want to keep this peace, we have to understand what we're dealing with. As the Retribution entered Earth's lower orbit, Park stood at the viewport staring down at the planet she had fought to protect without a single shot fired. They had succeeded with a bluff, a prototype, and the weight of conviction. But as she watched the clouds swirl below, one thought lingered in her mind. What happens when the truth comes out? The illusion was holding barely 2 weeks had passed since the Retribution returned to Earth. Captain Hannah Park had stood before the United Earth government, the President, the Joint Command, and 100 skeptical senators, recounting every moment of the mission. Her words were calm, measured, and deliberate. She told the truth mostly. She described the power of Project Sunburst, the terrifying reaction from the hegemony, the moment peace became real. What she didn't say was how close they had come to failure. That the bluff nearly collapsed more than once. That the signal sent to Saren was just a pre-programmed ping from a relay probe, nothing more than a whisper in the void, amplified by expectation. Or that of the supposed 12 Sunburst payloads, only 3 actually existed, and now, only 2 remained operational. Behind the scenes, Earth Command understood the stakes. The hegemony believed in the illusion. They had signed the treaty out of fear, not trust. But it was a fear that had bought humanity time years, maybe decades, and Park feared that time was already running out. In the classified labs beneath Earth's southern orbital defense complex, Science Officer Yan stood beside a thick, reinforced observation window. Inside the sealed chamber floated one of the remaining Sunburst devices suspended in a magnetic field. It pulsed softly with a rhythm like a heartbeat or a countdown. Park stepped up beside her, hands behind her back. "How's it holding up?" she asked. Yan didn't look away. "Stable, but unstable in theory. That's not encouraging," Yan sighed. "Captain, this tech was never meant to be fielded, let alone used. Sunburst was a theoretical deterrent, a research platform until you weaponized it in the field. I didn't have a choice." "I know," Yan said quietly, "but the quantum signature from the DO system, it's still expanding, slowly but steadily. The singularity didn't just vanish, it scarred the sector. Have the hegemony noticed?" "Not officially," Yan replied, "but I've intercepted long-range probes entering that system. They're investigating. If they collect enough data, they'll realize the truth. We don't have 12, and we may not even be able to safely use the 2 we have left." Park stared through the glass, watching the device glow. "What happens if they find out?" she asked. Yan turned to her. "Then we hope the myth of our power still matters more than the reality." On the other side of a galaxy, inside a secure hegemony science vessel, Admiral Kang stood silently in front of a holoprojector displaying live readings from the DO system. "The quantum field is still distorted," said Captain B, reporting from the scout vessel Harmony. "The exotic particles haven't dissipated. In fact, they're multiplying." "Multiplying?" Kang asked sharply. "Yes, sir. Slow replication. The field is beginning to affect nearby gravitational patterns. We estimate that in another 6 to 12 months, the distortion will be measurable from adjacent system." Kang stared at the data. It was worse than he feared. "You said the singularity might have left a wound in space." "You were right. And it's not healing," B confirmed. Kang dismissed the projection and turned toward the viewport. Stars glimmered like quiet witnesses to his thoughts. They were running out of time. Back on Earth, Park met privately with President Sphere. The room was dark, shielded, and buried deep below the Capitol. "I read the full science report," the president said, tapping the folder on the table between them. "You were right to keep the bluff going. But the risk is growing." "I know," Park replied. "We can't keep lying forever." "It's not a lie," Park said. "It's a strategic truth built on selective fact." The president raised an eyebrow. "Is that what we're calling it now?" Park didn't answer. President Sphere leaned forward. We have to be ready for the moment the illusion cracks. Because it will. Whether through science, espionage, or chance, the hegemony will learn the truth. What then? We fall back on diplomacy. We remind them what happened when they thought we had nothing. And if they no longer believe we're dangerous, Park's eyes hardened, then we remind them what we're willing to become. At that same moment in the far reaches of hegemony space, Minister Choi, recently released from house arrest under heavy supervision, was quietly feeding data to sympathetic elements within the hegemony's military research division. Bitter and disgraced, he hadn't forgiven the council for yielding to what he still believed was a human bluff. "This is not over," he whispered to his aide. "They think us cowed, but they have shown us their hand. Now we learn how to build our own." Inside a sealed lab, researchers began analyzing particle residue collected from the DOE system, matching it against the hegemony's quantum archives. What they found wasn't just foreign. It was unstable and replicable. The race to reverse engineer Project Sunburst had begun. Aboard the Retribution, now docked in low orbit for long-term maintenance, the crew worked with methodical focus. Repairs were slow. Systems damaged during the Sunburst test had never fully recovered. Beneath the surface, the ship's core processors were still degrading, having absorbed energy levels no prototype was designed to endure. Lieutenant Han entered the bridge quietly and found Park sitting alone, watching Earth rotate beneath them. "They've started scanning the DOE system," he said. He said, openly now. "Science vessels, not warships, but it's a start." Park nodded slowly. Han hesitated. "Do you think they'll figure it out?" "They will," she replied. "Eventually, maybe not today, maybe not next year, but they will." "Then what do we do?" She turned toward him. "We prepare. We research. We build. And when the time comes, we make sure they fear us again, not because of what we have, but because of what we might do." Han studied her expression. There was no panic in her voice. No fear, but there was exhaustion. "They still believe the myth," he said. "Yes," Park said. "But myths don't last forever." She looked out at the stars. "The truth is coming. We just have to make sure we survive it." The stars outside the Retribution's viewport drifted slowly as the ship cruised along the outer boundary of Earth-controlled space. It was a quiet sector, far from hegemony patrol routes and civilian traffic lanes chosen deliberately for its silence. Captain Hannah Park stood at the center of the ship's observation deck, alone. She hadn't been sleeping much, not since the last classified report from Intelligence Command. Hegemony probes had been detected around the DOE system, again closer this time, more precise. Their scientists had begun publishing theoretical analyses on quantum singularities and energy replication. The Council hadn't declared anything yet, but she knew what was coming. The countdown had started. She tapped her wrist console, activating the ship's private log. A soft blue glow washed over her face as the AI began recording. "This is Captain Hannah Park of the HS Retribution," she said. "Mission log, addendum entry, final reflections." Her voice was steady, but behind it was a slow, burning exhaustion, less from fatigue, more from the constant weight of pretending to hold a power she didn't have. "It's been 56 days since the signing of the Treaty of Mutual Recognition," she began. "Since then, Earth has seen a wave of cautious celebration. Colonies are stabilizing, trade lines are opening, and for the first time in generations, humanity isn't on the defensive." She paused. "But none of this is built on certainty. It's built on fear, on a weapon we only half understand, on a fleet that doesn't exist, on a lie we've told so well, we almost believe it ourselves." She looked down, then continued. "I've always known it couldn't last. The hegemony has resources we don't: spies, sensors, laboratories built for one purpose: control. They will figure out the truth. The only question is when, and what they'll do next." Her fingers tightened slightly on the console. "They will come again," she said quietly. "When the illusion shatters, they will come not as uncertain negotiators, but as conquerors." She let the words hang for a moment. And that's why I'm recording this. Not as a warning, but as a reminder. To whoever reads this in the future, officer, soldier, president, historian, remember what we were facing. We didn't have overwhelming strength. We didn't have a fleet. We didn't have a dozen doomsday weapons. We had one prototype, 2 working payloads, and the courage to make the galaxy believe we had more. Her eyes lifted to the stars. And they believed it. She reached down and withdrew the black cube, the last activation key for Project Sunburst. The second device had been dismantled weeks earlier after readings suggested it had begun quantum drift. This one still worked, but even that was a gap. This device may never be used again, she said. And that's a good thing, because we now understand what it really is, not just a weapon of war, but a tear in space. The last test proved it. The singularity didn't close. It continues to eat at the edges of the galaxy like a wound that won't heal. The scientists say it could take centuries to stabilize, if ever. She held the cube up in the dim light. This is not a tool for peace, she said. It's a promise of extinction for them and for us. Then, carefully, she placed the cube inside a secure containment pod and sealed it. Now it's your turn to protect the truth or use it, to lead, or to bluff one more time. Whatever you choose, remember, peace built on fear is fragile. But sometimes, it's the only kind that lasts long enough to become something more. She pressed stop. The log encrypted and disappeared into deep storage, accessible only by top clearance command in times of war. She stood up, turned toward the bridge, and gave a single order. Set course for Earth. As the retribution descended toward the planet it had risked everything to protect, Hannah Park stood alone on the command deck, watching the blue curve of Earth rise in the view. They had done what no one thought possible. They had stopped a war. They had bought peace. They had bluffed the galaxy, and it worked. But legacies, she knew, weren't made by victories. They were made by what people did after the illusion faded. And that chapter hadn't been written yet. Elsewhere on the ship, the senior officers had gathered for a quiet debriefing. No recordings, no transcripts. Just 12 people who had held the line when no one else could. It started, Jan said, showing the latest analysis on the central display. The hegemony has begun reverse engineering residual sunburst particle decay. They don't have a working version yet, but it's only a matter of time. Security Chief Wu shook his head. They'll build their own. And when they do, we won't be able to scare them with shadows. Unless we find a way to evolve the myth, said Lieutenant Han. They turned to Park as she entered the room. We don't evolve the myth, she said. We prepare for its collapse. She stepped forward and pulled up a second file marked Initiative, Last Ember. This is a contingency plan, she said. If the treaty fails, if the hegemony rearms, if diplomacy ends. It was a multi-phase protocol, decentralized fleet construction, sunburst research vaults relocated beyond the reach of standard sensors, and emergency alliances with non-hegemony species. Earth must never again rely on bluff alone, Park said. Next time, we must be ready to meet their force with something real. Her team exchanged solemn nod. 2 days later, as the Retribution prepared to dock for retrofit and long-term decommissioning, Park stood once more at her private terminal. She keyed in a final message. Not for Earth Command, not for intelligence, but for the future. If you're listening to this, she said, then the illusion has ended. And you're standing where I once stood at the edge of everything. You may feel fear. You may feel hopeless. But remember this, we stopped a war not because of what we had, but because of what they thought we had. That fear gave us peace, and in that time, we found a way to survive. Her gaze hardened.